Hi there, my name's Natasha Stott Despoja. I'm chair of Our Watch, the National Foundation to Prevent Violence Against Women and Their Children in Australia. I'm also honoured to be Australia's candidate for CEDAW. I'm on the land of the Ngarrindjeri people. I'm on Kangaroo Island in South Australia, and I pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I want to acknowledge the organisers of WOW for bringing us together in this way, albeit virtually. I've had the opportunity in my former capacity as Ambassador for Women and Girls for Australia to see your good work around the world. But I think my fondest memories are reserved for the 2018 WOW Festival, which I attended with my then 10-year-old daughter Cordelia. What an inspiring and empowering and inclusive experience that was. Thank you for bringing us together today. But I particularly acknowledge those of you who work every day to keep women and children safe. This work is more critical than ever. The pandemic, COVID-19, has exacerbated existing gender inequalities around the world, including in our region and in Australia. We know the worst manifestation of this has been gendered violence, violence against women and children in particular. We know this violence has taken on a myriad of forms, including online and image-based abuse, sexual harassment, workplace abuse, racism, family and domestic violence. The list goes on. Racist abuse and workplace abuse, as well as institutionalised violence and neglect. We know that while there are factors that are exacerbating the underlying drivers of this violence, so people experiencing stress, isolation, fewer distractions, financial turmoil, these factors may exacerbate the underlying conditions that lead to violence against women and children, such as disrespect of women, but they don't cause it, and they certainly don't condone it. We also know that gender inequality is not the same for all women. Racism, transphobia, homophobia, ableism, these and many other discriminations and disadvantages intersect to create different severity or experience of gender inequality for different women. In Australia, we're only starting to come to grips with the extent of violence experienced by women with a disability or women from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, and our national shame are the high rates of violence against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. I know that governments are reacting in a myriad of ways, to differing degrees and with differing resources when it comes to tackling the increased reports of violence against women and children. In Australia, the Australian government announced around $20 million in additional funding for some support services and to boost capacity of helplines, for example, such as 1800 RESPECT and Men's Line. They also launched an advertising campaign so that people could find out where to get help if needed. Our Watch has also launched an advertising campaign. I recommend it to you. No excuse for abuse. It's all about identifying different forms, including non-physical forms of violence, because we believe if we identify violence, we can begin to eliminate it. We know that a priority at this time has to be looking after those people who are experiencing violence and women and children who are at risk of violence. That includes ensuring perpetrators are held accountable, women have the services they need. But we also need to provide support for, and governments must also prioritise primary prevention, so stopping the violence before it begins. That's the work of Our Watch, and I implore governments around the region and the world to keep this as a priority. Because one thing we know is the international evidence is very clear that violence against women and children is linked to pervasive gender inequality. We know that the specific drivers of this violence include attitudes that condone violence, men's power over decision-making, limiting of women's independence, rigid gender stereotypes, and male peer relationships that emphasise aggression and disrespect for women. In terms of the figures and the statistics, again, we're all starting to come to grips with or ascertain what has happened over the last few months in our various countries, and I will leave my Pacific sisters to explain what's happening more broadly in the region or in their countries. In Australia, it is clear reports of violence against women and children, abuse, coercive behaviour and sexual assault are up. Women dying violently, reports are up. Breaching of apprehended violence orders has increased. We know this issue is only part of what's happening to women as a consequence of this pandemic. We know that existing gender inequalities in the home and the workforce have also been exacerbated. And we also know this is emphasising and reminding us of women's resilience too. I hope that whatever approach governments and other people and organisations, including NGOs, adopt, it will have a gender lens. I also hope that as we look at the COVID and post-COVID era, that we will adopt a transformative approach that has gender equality at the centre of the work that we do and the decisions that we make. And in doing so, we will start to prevent violence against women and children and hopefully eliminate it as well. This is an opportunity for us to be transformative and bold in the decisions that we make, whether that's in relation to women's unpaid work, caring responsibilities, whether it's in relation to women who are in those female-dominated professions and industries, many of whom have helped care for us and get us through this crisis or have been on the front line, but have conversely been disproportionately impacted by this virus, by this pandemic, and indeed by some government decisions. Thank you everyone for joining together today. It's a time for us to support each other and to imagine or reimagine how our future and our post-COVID future will be. I remain committed to eliminating violence against women and children, and I look forward to working with you all to make this a reality. Enjoy the rest of WOW.